अस्सलाम वालेकुम नाज़रीन, आवाज़ टीवी न्यूज़ जे पारां मां आहियां मेज़बान फ़याज़ नाइच। नाज़रीन, गुफ्तगू कंदासूं अमेरिका जे बारे में। अमेरिका जूं चूंडूं थियण वारियूं आहिनि ऐं असां हिन वक़्तु शिकागो में डेमोक्रेटिक पार्टी जो जेको नेशनल कन्वेंशन थिए पियो उते मौजूदु आहियूं। उते अमेरिका जी जग मशहूर सहाफ़ियुनि न्यूयॉर्क टाइम्स जी करस्पॉन्डेंट जेका सदर्न पार्ट ऑफ अमेरिका जेका उन ते फोकस कंदी आहे, एटलांटा में बेस्ड आहिनि ऐं उन सां गुफ्तगू कंदासूं अमेरिका जे बारे में, अमेरिका जा ख़ासि तरह जेको सदर्न रीजन आहे अमेरिका जो, उन जे बारे में ऐं मजमूई तौरु चूंडुनि जे हवाले सां गुफ्तगू कंदासूं। माया किंग साहिबा असां सां गॾु अचो त उन सां गुफ्तगू कयूं। माया, थैंक यू वेरी मच फॉर योर टाइम। फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, आई वुड लाइक टू आस्क द क्वेश्चन दैट what is the difference between the southern part of America and the rest of the America?
Well, the South is a unique place in that it's not always been a place that Democrats have been able to win. And so in 2020, when Joe Biden won Georgia by a very slim margin, that was a really significant moment for the party because they have always had a lot of struggles in breaking through and getting voters to support them in this region. I think also, it's a heavily, because it is a heavily conservative region, the policy priorities are different as it relates to healthcare, particularly right now. I think the South has really engaged in a lot of very aggressive fights over healthcare access, women's healthcare in particular, and affordable health insurance. And so all of these things animate how people think about politics and the ways that they turn out. And so Republicans at this point, I think, are really trying to make sure that the South remains a region where they are dominant, while Democrats are trying to find ways to organize, to take advantage of demographic changes, and make it more in play for them in the future.
Well, as you were talking about the fights, South has a long history of fights because this used to be an agriculture belt, and the slavery, they were southern states were in favor of the slavery. And what do you think that why, if there is a long black voters, a huge number of black voters in the southern part, why this is all the Bible Belt is also in the southern part? And
that is a big question. I think that's why Democrats are trying to organize more, because one of the big issues that you see in Georgia is the fight over voting rights and voting access. And so enslavement was a nationwide problem for this country, but of course was pronounced and concentrated in the Deep South. After that, we saw Jim Crow laws and the civil rights movement for more black enfranchisement that really was concentrated in states like Georgia and Alabama. And we still see the remnants of that movement and the things that, and the ways that there's still a lot of work to do. So there is a very pronounced fight over access to the ballot in Georgia. In 2022, the election laws changed. That made it a little bit more difficult for specific voters, black and low-income voters especially, to make it to the polls, to be able to vote in any way that they wanted to. And I think we will see that tested now this November. Ballot access and also, the number of black voters who do turn out and see this as an important election for them.
But if we see in the previous elections, one of the southern states, Florida, used to be a swing state, but with the passage of time, it has become a Republican state now. So instead of Democrats, it looks that Republicans are gaining more space in the southern part of the country.
Well, yes, you could say that, but then there are some Democrats who say, look, we're going to organize our people. We're going to make sure that more people are registered to vote. We're going to talk to conservative voters who don't like Donald Trump and get them possibly to vote for Kamala Harris. Talk to immigrant groups who are very, very dominant in Florida, particularly South Florida, and try to build all these different pieces of a coalition, maybe not to win in Florida, but to make, as you point out, Republicans less dominant in the state.
Yes, but southern parts, if we talked about Florida and about Georgia, but North Carolina also used to be swing states, but this time after Harris, it has come into discussion. Otherwise, it was also thought a Republican state.
Yeah, and it has. What's interesting about North Carolina is Democrats have lost that state by the thinnest margins for the past, I think, 2 election cycles. So while Republicans are still winning at the presidential level, it's not by very much. Democrats for the last several, I think more than three election cycles, have also won the governor's race there. So there's a lot of split ticket voting in North Carolina too. That's interesting.
If we talk about whole of the southern part, I think it is 15 to 16 states in the part in this region. 54% is white population, almost 19 is the Latinos, and 18 point something is the black voters. Do you think that why, as a journalist, you have been covering, you have been in DC and now you are in Atlanta, why the Democrats don't succeed to make space in the white voters?
It's an important question, and it's something that Democrats are still trying to figure out. What is the message that we send to suburban, particularly college-educated white voters? The Democratic Party used to be the party of white, working-class, union voters, and you've heard a lot of that language at the convention this week. But I think Republicans have been more successful at capturing a lot of class divisions within white voters, and also, racist and xenophobic rhetoric as it relates to immigrants, and who gets to vote and who has a legitimate vote. These are questions I think that Republicans are asking that tend to amp up a lot of emotion in voters, and I don't have a definitive answer on why they've still been so dominant with white voters, but I think it has to do, at least in part, with a lot of the language that they're using around who is a real American, and what kind of America they would want to live in.
So what do you think if we focus on this election? Do you think that Kamala, the shift of the candidate from a Democratic candidate, have really shifted the positions of both the candidates, both the parties?
It's possible. It's possible. I think we have to see what happens after Labor Day. But while we're here at this convention, it's likely that she's increased the level of enthusiasm among Democratic voters. She certainly got the attention of independent and swing voters, and she has really animated key constituencies. So I think the remaining month and a half to 2 months of campaigning will show just what her coalition will look like.
I'm really unable to understand, because the last night we saw that, for the first night we saw that the way the Democrats were praising Joe Biden as a president, but simultaneously they want to get rid of him. I'm unable to understand if he has done a lot. Every speaker says that he has done a lot. He's done a lot. Even the Bernie Sanders, who used to be a left side of the aisle, he was also praising Biden. Then why, if they are getting rid of him, and after shifting, there is a surge in the Democratic supporters?
Well, look, Joe Biden passed a lot of policies that Democrats are really proud of, and so they have not been shy this week about saying that. But after his very disastrous debate performance in June, poll numbers started to really dip for Democrats. Donors said that they would not be as supportive, and in very important states that Democrats usually win, it looked like they might not. Voters, in conversations that I've had with them, and even talking to pollsters who talk to voters themselves, had concerns about his age, and had concerns about whether or not he was up to the task of completing 4 more years. And so I think, of course, there was a lot of pressure for him to step aside. It was a lot of heartburn for the Democratic Party, but they want to win. That's really what it comes down to. And so even as they pushed him out, they still say, thank you for all that you did. We don't discount your record. We just don't feel like you will get us another 4 years to continue that good work that we feel like you have done.
What do you think both the parties are now? We are likely to see the official nomination of the Kamala Harris. What do you think that, if we focus on the swing states, 6 or 7 swing states, because now North Carolina is also included into debate, do you think any shift in these swing states?
Maybe. I wish I had a better answer, but that's why she's campaigning. Last night we were all at the convention here in Chicago. Illinois is not exactly a swing state, but Harris was in Wisconsin, a state she absolutely has to win. She's been in Pennsylvania. Governor Tim Walz was in Nebraska. She's traveled to North Carolina, and she has a lot of surrogates in Georgia, where I live as well. So, they understand that this is an election, and Trump, I will point out as well, is also in these states. He is going after these states just as or very aggressively. And so they know that it will come down to very thin margins, and that's why they are in these handful of states so often.
If we talk about the voter blocks, there is a black voters, there is a Latino voters, there is white American voters, there is a Muslim voters, especially because of this Gaza war. The Muslim voters is charged, is angry with the Democratic Party leadership. Where do you see these segments of the votes?
Well, the Democratic coalition has historically been very racially diverse, but it has been upheld in large part by Black voters and a very important, section of Latino voters. But I think the groups that you see Democrats really focusing on within these blocks, Black men. That's one group that has expressed more interest in supporting Republicans in the past than they have in the past. And we talked about, white suburban voters, college-educated white voters who may have supported Democrats and Republicans in the past. That's another group that they're really going after. And of course, young voters who are very excited about Harris, who don't historically vote in high numbers, they're now counting on to really turn out and also organize their own communities for the vice president.
Women voters, because all the Democratic campaign, one of the major issues focus of their is the reproductive rights. So do you think that this could be the trigger point for the women to support Democrats?
It has been, and since Roe v. Wade was overturned in 2022, and we saw, the limits on access to abortion, that also extended to just maternal health care complications. Democrats have been very successful down the ballot. We don't know what that will look like on the presidential level, but many Democrats that I speak to in the conversation say, look, abortion has been the winning issue for us for the last 2 years, and there's no reason to feel like it won't be again. We don't know if that's true, but it is very evident, and I'm sure you saw as well in the convention on Monday night, all of the focus on women's health care and reproductive rights, now also IVF treatments. All of that, I think, is saying not only are we the party that will protect that, but you have to vote us in large numbers to keep those protections in place.